Okay, Chitan. This sutta that we're looking at is Sujato's translation, and it is where is it? Oh, in the Anguttara Nikaya. It's in the
Mm-hmm.
fives naturally because it's got five things to it, and it's Sutta number 26. And that right at the top, um, you should be able to see. Um, let us say three icons. The one on on the right is a down. The one in the middle is
Mm-hmm.
okay, the text settings. So it's a settings symbol. Click that. Bring the text settings up, and then it says display information such as volume, page, reference. The answer is yes. Display all of that. Then
Okay.
original text with translation. Put line by line.
Okay.
And then activate the Pali word lookup, and you would look up Pali to English.
Yep.
The Chinese we're not going to use, okay? So now you
Mm-hmm.
can close that, and by now you should in fact see the
Yep.
Pali coming up. All
Yes,
right.
I can.
So so now that we're looking at it, let's start with um, the actual name of the sutta. You can actually see Vimutti right there. Vimutiyayata Tana Sutta. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So you can roll over that, and it says, I don't know what it is. That's a problem
Mm-hmm.
with the dictionary, is that you see, Thai language and other languages like Sanskrit do not do the thing that they started using in Greek and other Western literature, and that is to put a space between the words. Thai
Right.
has no spacing between the words.
Not at all.
Neither, no, but that makes it really hard for a smart dictionary to figure it out.
Yeah.
If you can find that space, you can figure it out.
So how do they decide when they're going to pause between words and phrases and stuff?
That's a very good question because I would assume that bringing it out of the original text as deep and past that they could find, which would probably be Sanskrit. And in fact, there's an entire industry of some people that are doing that. Is let's get a really good Pali first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um, so um, one of the words that I have a problem with in the um, way that he translates is he always translates bhikkhu in all of its forms into the word mendicant.
Ah, yeah, because it's Bikave.
Okay, bhikkave. Then so what we need actually part of the problem of learning a language like Pali or even ancient Greek is the end of the word determines its case, its gender, its if it's a verb,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's how it's declined for tense and other aspects.
Yep.
So the word here is going to be bikave in the first one, and then uh, bukhuno later because it's used in the change of tense. But
Yep.
in English, there's no tense change.
Yep.
Okay, so this is, but first off, let's do this. Let's see if we can get an overall understanding of what this sutta is talking about, and then we'll go in and pick it apart. Can we do
Sure.
that?
Yep.
Okay, so now let's start with this is, in fact, a sutta about the five factors or the five practices. Or, in fact, here he's using the word opportunities for freedom. That's an
Yep.
interesting way of putting it. Mendicants. There are these five opportunities for freedom. If a mendicant stays diligent, keen, and resolute, three new words we need to look up.
Oh yeah.
At these times, notice he didn't say all times, but at these times,
Mm-hmm.
their mind is free. Their defilements are ended. Now, here they're using asava, not nirvana, but so he's correct in using the word defilement here,
Mm-hmm.
because that actually goes, if you look down, you can find the word asafai in the second half of the second line.
Yes.
Okay, that's the word for defilement. Okay, so let's go back and get the flow again. If a mendicant stays diligent, keen, and resolute at these times, his mind is free, their defilements are ended, and they arrive at a supreme sanctuary. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
supreme sanctuary, huh? That's pretty highfalutin, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's in fact what has happened to the Pali in almost all cases is that if the Buddha is trying to give a very practical, down to earth kind of teaching, and it falls into the hands of a different group of people from a different culture that wants to exalt and exhilarate and make grandiose and greater and higher everything, they begin to translate stuff this way, and because of that, we tend to miss the actual simplicity.
Okay.
And so we'll look at what that means a little bit later. Okay, so now we say what? Five. First, and this is an interesting one because it points at something that we're doing, in fact, right now. First, the teacher or a respected spiritual companion teaches the Dhamma to the mendicant. That mendicant feels inspired by the meaning and the teaching of the Dhamma, no matter how the teacher or a respected spiritual companion teaches it. In other words, it doesn't matter about the teacher, but if the student gets it and takes inspiration from that right in that very moment, um, he feels inspired, and because of that, joy springs up. With
Mm-hmm.
that being joyful, rapture springs up. There you are, sukha and piti. You can find it right here in the Pali. We will in a minute. When the mind is full of rapture, the body becomes tranquil.
Mm-hmm.
I'm against that word tranquil again. A better word would be relaxed.
Mm.
They go way too high with that kind of stuff. When the mind feels happy and satisfied, the body becomes relaxed. That's what it's
Mm.
saying, and that's just, he's talking about anatomy right here, folks. And he's
Yep.
not talking about magic, but they have magicalized it. Okay? When the body is relaxed, one feels bliss. Well, no, wait a minute. If you look at the party, let's go right into the party right now. The
Okay.
relaxed part is the passive. Passive ha kayo. The kayo is the body. And now we say sukham, and then if you roll over, you can see verity means he feels.
Yep.
Okay? This, in fact, you can see Vedana in its root form there, or
Mm.
not its root, but you can see the root of Vedana that's
Yep.
in there, especially in the sense of this Vedi T. The word T is often used as a an ending expletive for oratory. T.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
And so that's what that T there is on that. But in fact, they're looking at the Vedi.
Yep.
Okay, so uh, when the body is relaxed, one feels sukha.
Mm. Well, that's very true.
And when sukha comes, and so this word blissful, he should not have translated that. He should have left that as sukha so that the students can begin to learn a little Pali right to its roots.
Oh yeah, that would actually be quite good. Yeah.
Okay, so the next one, Sukhino Sitam Samhadhyati. You can see the Samadhi right
Mhm.
there, Samadhyati. Okay,
Mhm.
we've already talked about what the word Samadhi means is collected together.
Mhm.
Okay, so when the mind is in sukha, the chitta part of the mind, the more primitive part, the emotional systems, etc., sukham chittam samudayati. So you can see the samadhi built right into it.
Mhm.
And he goes way overboard and calls it immersed.
Yeah, I've noticed he uses immersed a lot.
Ah, okay. So let's let's look at the word immersed for a moment in relationship to what we do know about the jhanas in the sutta,
Deep.
and what we come across is in fact the analogy of the second jhana, where the student in reality or through experience remembers that he can become immersed in a pond that has a wellspring under, and that everything is bubbling up and all of that kind of stuff. But
Mhm.
this passage right here is talking about when you're hearing the John, when you're hearing, you're just sitting and listening to the Dhamma.
Mm.
And you can fall into first jhana. Why? Because you're really into it. You really like it. But
Yep.
when he uses words immersion, he's actually pointing at higher jhanas, and that is in fact not just a problem for the translators, it becomes a problem for those who are trying to understand what's going on.
Mhm.
When we read that, we automatically stop at words like that and say, "Whoa, whoa, I'm not
Mhm.
ready for that." Yes, you are. You're reading this stuff and you're getting it out of it. This is He's talking about a natural process here. He is
Mm.
not talking magic, but the translators have gotten into the habit of translating it magically from the very beginning.
Yep.
From Wiles Davies on up through Bodhi, and now Subato is borrowing from their tradition.
Mhm.
Okay. He says, then, this is the first opportunity to freedom. If a mendicant stays diligent, keen, and resolute at this time, their mind is freed, their defilements are ended, and they arrive at the supramundane sanctuary. Well, again, that supramundane sanctuary business. Let's see what we can do. Okay, the key word that I'm looking for here and find it several times is the word va,
The word.
because the word wa or va, ka.
Right.
Okay, that's the
Either
word for
or.
and I can find it one, two, three times, which means that if the translation is true to form, every and in the text conforms to the ands that we find in the Pali.
Mhm.
Okay, little trick there. So, an anuttaram, which means having nothing better.
Yep.
Yoga here means actually the word yoga actually is work,
Okay.
not attachment. So,
Okay.
yoga kayam is or kima is in fact um, letting go or releasing the work that we have to do. In other words, the work is finished.
Mhm.
And now this anumpa punati means just reaches or attains. So what it means is that basically that's the job to be done, and that there's nothing better than this.
Mhm.
Okay. There's nothing better than this. When you've been in the Catholic Church even one time, you start using words like supreme and sanction. Okay? And that's not what the Pali is saying. Now, let's go deeper into the actual sutta itself, because basically what we're talking about here is that if we listen and go really deep into the understanding of the Dhamma the way that the teacher is teaching it, then the student will naturally fall right into first jhana while he's listening. Because I know that, I use that.
Yep.
But I also recognize that it really doesn't have anything to do with the way that I teach it. It has to do with the fact that if the student really, really gets that Dhamma, he'll say, aha, I got it. And that's what we're looking for, that kind of aha, that relaxation of now I understand it. Now I've got it. Okay. This is the first opportunity for freedom, it says. Furthermore, it may be that neither the teacher nor a respected spiritual companion teaches the Dhamma to a mendicant, but rather the mendicant is the one who's teaching the Dhamma in detail to others as they have learned and memorized it too. Wow, now this is a really important point. This is something, in fact, that Ajahn Po drilled into me.
Okay.
He says, well, if you're going to learn the Dhamma, you got to teach it. That's it. I mean, and basically this sutta is saying, oh no, not only that, but as one teaches the Dhamma, possibly the right way to do it is while in first jhana, that you reach the first jhana and you work with that.
Okay.
That the mendicant feels inspired by the meaning and the teaching. Well, if I'm not inspired by the Dhamma, then why the heck am I even out here? Well, no. Okay, so it doesn't matter really how they teach it in Dale. The fact is that when the teacher has the spirit of the Dhamma, then that's what happens. The feeling inspires with that, the joy springs up. Seen any lately? Being joyful, rapture springs up. When the mind is full of rapture, the body becomes
Relaxed.
relaxed. When the body is relaxed, one feels sukha and bliss. Okay, and you can see that when he says feeling inspired, joy springs up. Well, let's look at what that means here, because there's a word in here that I want to look at. And let's look at it backwards, okay? Jayati is the word that means to born or raise or springs up. But
So
you
you're
can
born in a
actually,
good state.
well, in fact, that's exactly right. You got it. You reached the point quicker than I wanted you to. Okay, because you take the T off, because the T is just an expletive that can be deleted. Or maybe we should start using it in our English language, T. So that's right. There's your word birth. But here it's used correctly in the sense of just arising or bringing up. All right, so let's look at the word before that. This is my beauty, okay?
Delight.
Pamojam. Guess where the word mojo comes from? All right, and let's look at it on the rollover, and it says delight, joy, happiness, okay? That's what springs up. There's the joy. And so in this, it's saying that the pity or the excitement part arises with this delight that we have. So let's go back to the next one, and we see the Dhamma Pati Samvedino. You see that word?
Yeah.
Dhamma Pati Samvedino. All right, let's roll over it, and it says, it's talking about one of the ways of using it is doctrine, which we would naturally use, the Buddha Dhamma, but then it's using the word truth or nature. Okay, and so if we'll look at that way, then the word pati is a prefix. It means or backwards or whatever like that. Um, and so um, Sam here means right or true. It doesn't mean permanent and eternal the way that they think it does. But Vedi has again the word to know, but you can see, in fact, the word know here is Vedana
Mm-hmm.
know down deep. Now let's look at the other one before that, and we find the word atha, which has to do with, if you look down in there, you'll see that actually what they're looking at is a practical application and the results, as opposed to the theory.
What do you mean?
The word atha
Yep.
and the word atha pati samvedo.
Yep.
Atha here is actually the application or the process, not a theoretical thing.
Right.
Atha
Okay.
expresses, say, the goal as opposed to the doctrine. But it's
Mm-hmm.
really not the goal because it's more the practical application.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So here we're talking about that the joy springs up, and he uses the word inspired. Well, certainly we're talking about a really deep feeling about both the way that we practice and the Dhamma in general, either as taught by the Buddha or how it all fits together. In other words, this is that insight or that whole thing. But look how many words it takes in the Pali
Yeah.
to try to put that out. So this is where that quality inspired comes from. I'm not sure that inspired is the right word. But meanwhile, on with that, the next one down is it says now, Pamutya rasa, greatly delighted.
Mm.
Greatly delighted, okay? In fact, here's something that you can see is the delight. That pamuja here, it's a D, but it's the same part. That mojo, that
Mm-hmm.
delight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that can do that quality that we hear sometimes on television. Here, hold my beer.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. I'm going to take. I'll take that one. Right. This is what we're talking about. Okay, like I've got it. And so that's what happens with many teachers is they become quite delighted with
Yep.
the Dharma. And when the mind is full of this delight, this rapture, then the body becomes passive. You can see piti manasa.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here we're not using the word sita. Here we're using the word mana.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Because this is the Buddha's way of talking about the higher mind.
Okay.
Okay, this is the higher mind. The Chitta is actually the lower mind, the mind that talks and thinks and feels.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but here we're talking about the higher mind is full of rapture in the sense of this is all about attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the attitude is fearless. The attitude of uh, uh, completely in it. I've got it. I've
Yep.
got this covered. We've got this one. And with that, we can relax.
Yeah. No
Okay?
doubt.
And so, Kaio Passim Bhutati, which means basically calms down. So the body calms down. Why then does Sugato go and borrow Bhikkhu Bodhi's word tranquil or tranquilize? Because it's the same word that is used in the Anapanasati Sutta for step 4 of Anapanasati. It really just means relax.
Relax. Okay.
Yeah, because relaxation of the body is all about the sukha, and you can see how they're intertwined here in the way that this is put together.
Yeah, because I always used to think tranquility was kind of like,
Way out there somewhere.
yeah, exactly.
Out of your range,
Something a
exactly.
little bit different from the PT and the Sukha, and something, yeah,
hmm
but
Well,
never relaxed.
if we can think, if we can make things that come from a foreign place sound foreign, they'll stay foreign. And because of that, it's difficult for the students. We need
Yeah,
to make this stuff easy
yeah.
because it really was easy for the guys who were sitting and listening to what the Buddha said. They understood his language.
Yeah, I mean, reading all the sutras and stuff, it doesn't seem like these people found it difficult at all. And yet there's us. Um, Nowadays everyone finds
We
things
want
really
something
difficult.
fresh.
Yeah, and it's
Freedom?
like,
I don't
what's
want
missing here?
freedom. I want, I don't know what, but it's got to be magical.
Exactly. There's some magical thing with these sutras, and it's unattainable.
Right, but here you can see that no, not only is first jhana attainable, but it's attainable while you're listening to your teacher talk,
Mm,
or it's attainable for the teacher while he's giving a Dhamma talk.
yep.
That is what it's about that makes it possible for people to practice and get into the first jhana,
Mm,
which we'll cover in a moment. All right, so now this is the second opportunity for freedom. Furthermore, and then he leaves out a whole lot. This is another thing that the translators do. Is that this second opportunity for freedom? You see, in the Pali text, with the full Pali text, when the monks originally were chanting this, knowing what they were talking about, this is that one of those points of repetition.
yep.
And the repetition and the repetition and the repetition is why the sutras work the way that they do. If you really understand what they're saying word by word, is you repetition through them. But the
Hmm.
translators are trying to make it easy for people,
Yep.
I guess, to read, if not to understand.
Yep.
But we
No,
want this
I've
stuff
noticed
not
that.
just to understand it, but to go deep with it. Okay, and so for the same mentality of using words like tranquil and supreme sanctuary, is that same mentality that says, well, since it's unavailable to me, it's unavailable to everybody. Why do I have to bother with going through the repetition that are
Hmm.
actually steps of the ladder that takes us up there?
Yeah, I feel like the repetition is actually useful, almost. Useful to gauge concentration, um, and also to kind of drill it in as well, drill in the message.
Right, to drill in. I mean, if you're going to strike oil, you have to dig or drill.
Yeah.
You have to keep digging and keep digging. Well, in this case, we have to keep coming back to joy, keep
Mm,
piling it on. Okay. Now, the next one, further, it may not be that either the teacher nor the mendicant teaches Dhamma, but the mendicant is reciting, and he recites the teachings in detail. And as he learned and memorized it. And I have
mhm.
seen monks. In fact, I have great respect for Mahasamsat, that I would walk by his room, and there he was reciting the Pali out loud in his room, going over it and over it and over it again. And it does work. And so, with this repetition of and the understanding of this recitation, um, that's that's one of the reasons why so many things are done in fives. Like this is the fives, and it's got 5 ways of getting into first jhana.
Oh yeah.
Okay, And so many, Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Noble Paths, 16 Steps of Anapanasati, and we can just keep numbering everything.
Yep.
Well, part of the reason for the numbering is then we can keep track. If we remember how many there are of them, then that'll inspire us to remember how, each one of them
Mm-hmm.
one by one as we're trying to talk about it.
Yep.
And so if we got 5 topics to cover, okay, we're on to number 3 now.
Yeah.
And that's when the guy is off on his own and he's working with it and he's still talking about and thinking about the Dhamma itself.
Mm.
3 times we're in the Dhamma so far.
Yep.
Okay, that the Dhamma is the key when it's inspiring and we wake up to it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so we can skip down now past this other, uh, uh, down to the next furthermore, or this is the third opportunity for freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Furthermore, it may be that neither the teacher nor the mendicant teaches, nor does the mendicant recite the teaching, but the mendicant thinks about and considers the teaching in their heart, examines it with the mind, and they learn it and they memorize it or they put it to memory that way. So
Mm-hmm.
you can imagine then the Dhamma dude that's just had a talk yesterday or whatever, and he's driving down the road in his car and he's thinking about the Dhamma and he'll just howl with laughter
Yep.
because he gets it. Okay,
Yep.
this is that quality also that we can get immediate inspiration when we continue to think about and dwell and put that as the top focus of. This is in fact where this sutta fits in very well with 47 in the sense of the guy who's doing this, he's the one who's really been in the Dhamma for a while and he's really got it on his mind all the time.
Mm.
Okay. And so again, feeling inspired, joy springs up. With joy, rapture springs. With the mind full of rapture, the body becomes relaxed. And when the body is relaxed, sukha feelings, the feeling of everything's sabai,
Mm.
sukha, it comes. And when this sukha feeling, the mind becomes not immersed in samadhi, but rather collected together.
Mm.
That he's promising too much. And when people read immersed in samadhi, they put it way, way up there.
Yep.
But if you actually understand what samadhi means, because in fact the word immersed is nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
Look at it, and it says sukhino, sukha. Now we've already talked about when the mind is piti.
Mm-hmm.
Now we say sukhino chittam. Now the mind becomes immersed in samadhi. No. No. This is the word chittam is not the same word for the same mind as we had earlier. Now what it's saying is that now with this, the mind becomes unified in the sense that the reptilian part of the mind now really comes along and the mind becomes unified in that
Oh.
sukha.
Mm-hmm.
Sukhuno chitam samadhi, gosh, samadhiyati.
T.
Yeah, samadhiyati, which is that ending. It's almost the period.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sukhino chitam samadhiyati. This is the fourth opportunity for freedom. But again, it's still the Dhamma. 4 so far. Furthermore, it may be that neither the teacher nor the mendicant reaches the Dhamma, nor does the mendicant recite the Dhamma or even think about it.
Mm.
But a mendicant subject to as a foundation of immersion is properly grasped, attended, born in mind, and comprehended with wisdom. In other words, if they take instruction in Anapanasati, they don't even have to hear anything about Buddha's
Mm.
Dhamma.
Mm-hmm.
They can take just the only the Anapanasati part. That mendicant feels inspired by the meanings and the teachings in the Dhamma, no matter how a mendicant subject as the foundation emerged, he's properly grasped, attended, borne in mind, and comprehended with wisdom. And by doing this, in other words, we begin to get that it's really okay that I feel good.
Mm.
All right, so let's look at some of the Pali here. Okay, I see the third at the end. Is there's a trick also about finding the ands if there's a bunch of them, so that you can break down a big passage.
Oh,
This is
okay.
also we've started before. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Now what we're talking about is the part where it says, "But a mendicant subject as a foundation of immersion is properly grasped, attended to, borne in mind, and comprehended with wisdom." So that last line, "and comprehended with wisdom,"
Yep.
that part is the second line of the Pali, which is um Supati Vedanam. Panya. You can Panyaya. Okay, so that
Yep.
word Panyaya is in fact the wisdom.
Wisdom.
That's
Yeah.
knowledge. That's understanding. Okay, and the word before that means thoroughly understood, or we've got it. But we can also see again the word Vedam in there.
Yes.
Okay, and so. Okay, now let's go for the up to the last line and look at the last two words there. The one um, we can see sikantam or sumanasikantam, which is actually brightening the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, to gladden the mind, but you can see the manu in there also. The supataratam
Mm-hmm.
means that we this is the part about over and over and over again. It looks like well considered, but you can also see that this is the quality of sati, a well
Yes.
considered, keeping it in mind
Yep.
over and over and over again. Okay, this is where the mind, because it keeps growing into it over and over again, it does actually reach that deep level of understanding, which then gives us wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
All right, this is a natural process and it does not require the Dhamma. But here, I think that when Sugato is using the word Dhamma, he's capitalized it wrongly because we're already talking about the kind of Dhamma that is not the Buddha Dhamma. This is not one of the four. This is one how to gain first jhana without the
Mm.
Dhamma.
Yep.
This is possibly the way that he learned it as a child. This is the way that we almost always teach it if we're actually teaching students first jhana.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so backing up a little bit more, sugatitam means grasp tightly, well learned. So
Mm.
this is um, uh, kind of an object because of that time. You can see, in fact, words that end in time or with that A with an M underneath. It's
Mm-hmm.
always in this language the dative case
The dative.
is the dative case. What is the dative? That's the object case.
Right.
Sam hit Susie. Susie is in dative case, but and in Pali you would say Susie Tom.
Yep. Susie
Okay.
Tam.
Well, you hear that in the resuscitations on that they give at the what? Buddham Saranam Gacchami. Dhammam Saranam Gacchami. Why? Because they're in dative case. Buddham Saranam Gacchami means I go to refuge in the Buddha.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah.
Okay, so here's our word samadhi again.
Yep. And now
All
it's got a
right.
nimitta with it.
Uh-huh. Uh okay. Well, here the nimitta that they get so wrapped up with means basically the object or the thing that we focus on that brings the mind together.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the beginning, we use the breath for that.
Mm-hmm.
So with this subject of foundation or immersion, they say, I don't know what immersion, because see, the word immersion again sounds so far away. And so it sounds really hard to do. But samadhi doesn't necessarily mean immersion, it means collection. And with this nimittam here, we can see that okay, when a meditation subject, okay, so that's the nimittam
Mm-hmm.
as a foundation for immersion. Well, okay, all right. So we have an object or we start someplace, and by attaining that, we become collected around that point. This is
Yep.
basically what he's talking about. The language that he's using here is quite highfalutin.
Yep. The mind just
So,
calms down and comes together on the one thing.
and so, even without the Dhamma, one can put oneself in this state intentionally if they know what they're doing, which is basically the steps of Anapanasati. So the Buddha actually lays it out in Anapanasati. Here's exactly what we're doing anyway. But he expects people to walk up from out off the street into the dojo or whatever and hear the Dhamma and get it immediately. Why isn't that possible here in the West? It's because we've got a magical idea of what it is to get it.
Yep.
And that much of what we're actually going to get goes against the grain of our society.
Yeah.
Look at all the derogatory language. Okay, hobo.
Yeah.
I think that this would have been a better translation. Instead of translating it as mendicant, he should have
Mendicants.
translated it as hobo. Because then people would say, yeah, we can do it. We're all hobos at heart. Let
Yep.
me out of here. So, going down a little bit further, in fact, we're almost at the end because here we're talking about this immersion in or getting the mind collected together.
Mm-hmm.
Then one can also feelings that we're talking about, these feelings of joy spring up.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, pamudesai pati jayati. So this joy brings on the rapture, especially if we've got the right idea or the right attitude.
Yep.
So all of the steps are the same here to get into that state. So, and when blissful, the mind becomes immersed in samadhi. Well, except for one thing now. Now it's sounding circular because up in the beginning they were already using the word samadhi. Samadhi
yeah.
niyata.
Yeah.
All right. So the
So then
word
what's this and
samadhi,
what's that?
because we're looking at it not because it's not necessarily circular, but in the Pali language, it's got different points to it. But here we're really talking about the Sukhino Sitam Samati Dayati. In other words, it's not just taking the object and therefore getting the thinking part of the brain going. Now, it's the deeper mind.
Mm-hmm.
The Sitam becomes also not becomes immersed in samadhi. No, let us say that the deeper part of the mind joins the bliss show or
Mm-hmm.
the delight band.
So that would be second jhana then.
No, we're still talking about first jhana here.
Okay. So it's just a deeper level to it.
Well, let us say that this then would be the getting into it. This would be the second half of the fruit of the first jhana.
Second half of the fruit. Oh, because the
Pardon?
first half is the joy.
Well, the first half is the development and the sustaining it. Now it's just a
Okay.
complete, okay, here's the fruit. The fruit of it is that now Sukhino Chitam Samatiyati.
Mm-hmm.
I said it first right that time. And then he says, this is the fifth opportunity, and then he repeats that we've gone to.
Mm-hmm.
Here are the 5 opportunities for freedom. All right, now, wait a minute, back up. Let's go down and look at the Pali in this, and then you'll see Pancha, 5. We can see Imani Ko Bhikkhave, which is just in Pancha, 5. Vimutti Yatani, this is freedom. Okay, the
Mm-hmm.
5 opportunities are, and Yatha Bikini, no. Okay, so he's just going through here what we talked about before, being keen. But now let's look at this apamata means small, and yet I don't see him take the word small in that. He
Mm-hmm.
says, if the mendicant stays diligent, keen, and resolute at these times, but I don't see how that word puts in there. But the next one, which is kind of a zealot, or he exerts himself, or he puts out the exertion for it. This would be, I guess, resolute. But here we're talking about an actual energy of putting it out, which I didn't see in any of the words that he put in there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I think that we've already covered much of that in there. So these are the 5 freedoms. If a mendicant stays, I would say that apamatasa would have to be in the in the way of in the vicinity or in the area.
Right.
This is what would give ideas of access concentration. But this here would be accent not to concentration, because we're not even using the word samadhi here, even if we translate it wrong, but rather we're talking about a frame of mind. In other words, diligent, keen, resolute, points
Mm-hmm.
in the right direction. I'm just not sure that those are the right words to use, because it sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, it does.
To where zeal has a whole lot more to do with it. I'm so interested and curious about it that the energy just, I mean, the work is to not do it.
Yep.
All right, so that's the end of this sutta, but let's go back and review it in the sense that this is, first off, what we can say is more than likely this is a sutta that happened perhaps decades, if not centuries, after the time of the Buddha himself. And
All
one of the
right.
dead giveaways is there's no "thus I have heard" as a way of starting it off.
Right, okay.
All right. So, but there's nothing wrong with this because everything in here fits precisely the way that it works, but the way that the Dhamma works, but it gives some insights into the sense of the power of the Dhamma itself.
Mm.
Because a lot of people can say, how can he blah blah if he doesn't meditate?
Yeah.
Okay, the answer is, well, how do you know what is meditation? Because it looks like that for you, meditation is the struggling with number 5 and not getting it.
Yep. Exactly.
As opposed to getting it, and then we go through those stages, or we can just understand it.
Uh-huh.
And we can just
Okay.
place our mind into that state that when we really understand what the practice is, we can just go into it immediately. Huh! Like
Yeah.
that. It's not a hard thing for us humans to do, but the way that the sutras are translated, they try to make it really, really hard on us.
Yeah.
I think that may have something to do with the Christian mentality of sin,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that, ere how hard you struggle, you can't be free from sin because they've got this long term kind of thing about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but where we're talking about here, in all cases, right here, right now, you can go into a happy state.
Mm-hmm.
This is what needs to be practiced. Just remembering the Buddha
Mm.
for some is enough to get them into that really happy state.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we understand that, then we can understand, oh, I don't have to suffer and sin and go to confessional and work really hard for some future benefit.
Yeah.
I can have that benefit right here, right now.
Yeah.
That's what so many of the Westerners are missing out on.
Yeah, I read the Majjhima Nikaya. I think it's 101. It was quite a difficult read. But the Buddha spoke about
He was telling a story about what he told to the Jains. Is that the story?
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, I
and
know that one.
yeah, it's a good one.
I
It's
think part of the problem with that one again would be the translation. Go tear into the Pali to see what's going on
yeah.
there.
Some bits did seem a bit funny. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, especially when we have these tools. I mean, they're
Yeah,
not perfect tools, but they can get us a long way into looking at what's going on.
yeah, very useful. Um, anyway, what I was saying is that sutta also talks about the whole the free will, that how we feel now is also to do with our free will right now, how we choose
Hmm.
to how we choose to deal with the now, basically.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And we can pray with the right now delightfully. That's
Mm,
part of the way of looking at it, is to become delighted with the Dhamma.
mm, yeah. It does have like a kind of um joyful nature to it, I think. Where reading it kind of it reading it does collect
Like
the
it
mind
was a
together.
religion.
Sorry?
Reading it like it was a religion.
Yeah. Yep.
Something serious and heavy with big authority figures and punishments, and you know the story.
Yep.
But this is being free from all of that. is to recognize we can be free. We do not have to buy and then carry around the weight that society has decided that it wants each human to carry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot recently. Yeah, just all of these societal things that everyone is burdened with, and it's just an endless chasing, just chasing for these, I suppose, these highs. And yeah, I mean, it's like you put in so much effort for so little, and it's just like you don't need to do that at all.
That's right. We can sit down and relax.
Yeah.
When the cat's away, the mice will play, and the cat's in the mouse's head.
And it's all because of this idea of self.
And
Everything
things
is
are
just,
dangerous. We got to protect the self. It's not
yeah,
just that there's the self, it's that it needs to be protected.
yeah. And we can
And
come out of that.
you don't need to be feeling like you need protection.
Yeah, exactly.
Feel good instead.
Yep.
Yeah, the Dhamma is really marvelous.
Yeah. Agreed.
All right. Well, let's finish this one off and we'll talk
Hmm.
later. I hope that you enjoyed our little adventure into a bit of Pali.
Yeah, it's like being back in school. In a good way, of course.
Oh, you enjoyed school, huh?
Well, I enjoyed the good parts. Some things I really didn't like, but other things I liked a lot.
What was it that you didn't like?
Authority.
Oh, you're talking about the school you went to as a child. I was talking about
Yes.
what you didn't like about the talk we just had.
Oh no, I liked everything about the talk. I thought you were talking about
Okay. I
school in
misunderstood
the
you. Never
past.
mind. Never mind. All
Yeah.
right, Chintan. Well, we'll see you later.
All right, Dhammarato. Good talk.